SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Hi, this is Chris Keem with Cannon Ford Lincoln. Forget about the tariffs raising prices. Ford Motor Company has lowered prices. Employee pricing across the board on Ford and Lincoln products. Come see us at Cannon Ford Lincoln. When the smoke clears, nobody beats a Cannon deal. Nobody.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to Middays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East, in for the vacationing rhino today. We'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. All right, we're getting all set up here. You know by now that Pope Francis, the pontiff, has died at the age of 88. That, according to the Vatican, passed away at 7:35.
4 hours after meeting. Was it 4 hours after meeting Vice President J.D. Vance?
Yeah. Really incredible video of the Pope and the Vice President meeting. Photos as well. That was on Easter Sunday at the Vatican. And they appeared to be having an engaging conversation. He's been ill, of course. He's 88 years old. His health's been faltering. J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism several years ago. I think 2018.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. So the pontiff offered the vice president 3 big chocolate Easter eggs, one each for the vice president's 3 children who did not attend, as well as a Vatican tie and some rosaries. Wow, those are cherished gifts for a Catholic coming from the Pope. Now, I'm born and raised Catholic, and, popes come and go. We'll see who might be the next. Don't always agree with popes, honestly, and that's a prerogative. And contrary to what a lot of people think that have never been to a Catholic Mass, we don't really talk about the Pope. It never comes up. He's recognized as the father of the church while serving as the Pope. But other than that, this particular Pope, I guess, ventured into the political waters more than many do, and in many of his positions I didn't personally support or agree with. I think conservative Catholics would say the same, would agree with me with respect to that just lack of alignment with the Pope. But liberal Catholics would say he didn't get enough done.
Yeah.
So, you're trying to appease a gigantic constituency, if you will, that's worldwide, and there are lots of different views and opinions. I will say that I don't ever hear anything political when I go to Mass. There was one exception, and it happened last year. And I won't get into the details of that, but I
remember you talking about it.
Yeah, it bothered me, and I told our pastor, one of the priests, of course, 3 in our parish, And I told him I just thought that was inappropriate.
Uh-huh.
And he was, and I did it in a very respectful way, of course. And that's the way I termed it. It's inappropriate. You know, I don't come to Mass to be
lectured. About politics,
right? About political positions and so forth. And I just thought that was inappropriate. And I didn't really get any. Thanks for your input. We won't let that happen again. Really, no response, and that's fine, honestly. But I felt compelled to at least speak up because while I was in my pew at that moment in time, I was unhappy, honestly.
I remember that.
Yeah, I just felt. But that's it. And all my years of all the masses I've been to, I can't think of another case where I ever saw that. This Pope is, again, been more political than most, I would say. And I disagree with that. And I disagree with many of his political positions. That does not mean I don't respect, obviously, the status and the position of the pontiff and just the papal infrastructure. I do, of course, as a practicing Catholic. But, and please, those of you who aren't Catholic, this is a clarification. We don't hold the Pope in higher regard than we do God Almighty and Jesus Christ. And I know some people have actually asked me about that. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You know, this is a human representative on the earth. So, and we could talk hours about all that sort of theology and philosophy.
You know, I would love to hear what J.D. Vance would have to say about this, and maybe you can ask him tomorrow if you run into him, Gerard.
Yeah, how cool is this? So this all happened Friday. I was asked to do a panel discussion on Newsmax. This is like the sixth one I've done in the last 3 weeks, I guess. And about an hour later, I received, and by the way, I got that gig because on Newsmax because I attended as a delegate at the RNC, and Newsmax found out I was there and was a talk show host here at SuperTalk Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And it's not unusual, you know that, Will. These big networks, they like to bring on radio talk show hosts.
They're looking for content.
That's exactly right, just like we are. They're looking for content, and you know, that gives them kind of a local pulse, if you will, someone who is in touch with their state, in our case. And as you know, we're one of, if not the only, statewide networks in the country.
Yeah.
Most are local.
You have some in, you know, obviously big cities, Atlanta, Dallas, etc., but not one that covers an entire state. Right,
exactly. So we're unusual in that respect, in a good way, in a positive way. And after I did the RNC interviews, I did two, and they said, hey, this was great. We'd like to get you on some more. We'll be back in touch. And I didn't hear anything. I said, well, I guess I didn't do well enough. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue,
they never call.
And I, you know, it's not one of those things where you call them and say, hey, look, you got anything for me? You know, you don't do that. So out of the blue, 8 months later, I get 3 different schedulers, they call them. And as you can imagine, for a big deal like that, you got to have multiple schedulers to bring in guests and to figure content out. We, of course, have one here at SuperTalk, Alex Payton, who does scheduling and serves as our content director for the 2 statewide shows, Mornings and Middays. It's more than a full-time job, as you know. I mean, it's demanding. Just people behind the scenes, just so you'll know, are involved in making all this a reality and come together every day. Well, at a big network like a Newsmax, it's multiple schedulers, depending on the shows, because they've got a full slate of shows that have constant guests, you know, throughout the day and night. And all of a sudden I get 3 in a week. Like, what the heck is going on there? So I got contacted again last week to do the one I did, or 2 weeks ago to do the one I did Friday. An hour later, I get this text. And this person introduces herself in the text as the White House Media Affairs Director.
Which immediately, you said that it brought up you'd have thought, okay, this got to be a scam.
Yeah. She said, she announced her name, said with the White House Media Affairs team, and I looked it up. She turns out she's the director of that team.
All right.
And she said, I hope all's well. We're planning some exciting coverage ahead of 100 days of the Trump administration. Are you available to join us for a Radio Row event on Tuesday, that's tomorrow, when admin officials and cabinet secretaries will be present to give various interviews? ? This will be in the Eisenhower Executive Office building on the White House complex, 10 to 1. Please let me know what you think. Thank you. And, you know, I hesitated to respond. I said, I need to check this out. You know, this is just bizarre. And I sent it to Congressman Michael Guest for him and somebody on his staff to check out. And in the meantime, I was checking it out as best I could and learned that, the name this person provided is, in fact, listed as the White House Media Affairs Director. And then I did a reverse lookup on her phone number, and it's a New Jersey area code, and I got the initials. You know, you can pay money to get the full name, and it said, the initials, and that lined up. So I said, what the heck? I just called her. I said, I'm just going to call her and check this out. And more on that on the other side of the break. We've got Senator Daniel Sparks on the program today. Stay with us.
Here's John.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth Studio. Once again, Senator Daniel Sparks. He's going to join Middays at 11:05. He's attending some meetings concerning the public employees retirement system. You know, he's handling that issue in the Mississippi State Senate, was involved in authoring a bill to create a new tier 5, for the public employees retirement system. So, just talking about this invitation to participate in a Radio Row event tomorrow. So I called her. Her name is Bryn Jeffers, by the way. It's no secret. She is the White House Media Affairs Director. She literally just texted me, Will, and said, I just sent you some more info.
Okay, good.
So, and I haven't checked it out yet. But so I just picked the phone up, called her, and she answered. And I just talked to her, and I said, I got to tell you, I hope this doesn't come across as insulting or offensive, but I wasn't sure this was real. And she said, oh, you can look me up. I said, I already have. Because it was 2 hours of research.
Yeah.
Best I could do, of available information before I called her. And now here's the thing. The caveat was, you got to let us know by 5 o'clock today, Friday, Good Friday. And she sent me, according to her text, we're going to send you some information, but we need an email address. And I sent it, and then they sent that. And this was the announcement of the event, high-level overview of the event, along with simple document to complete for Secret Service, security clearance. Now, we're going to be at the Eisenhower building, which is adjacent, directly across a street that separates the west wing of the White House and the Eisenhower Executive Office building. And, I mean, I looked it up, photos of it. Yeah, I mean, you see the Eisenhower building, there's a White House. I mean, it's just,
where most of Watergate happened.
It's exactly right. And there's a tunnel that connects the two. So there's obviously a security process. She said expect 30 minutes to get through that. So Houston McDavid, our engineer here, of course, is going to accompany me. He'll set everything up. So they're providing table, chairs, internet, and Wi-Fi, and I suspect there's more information that I haven't opened yet in the email she just sent. But apparently it's a Radio Row event. So think of it like Media Days, SEC Media Days. That's kind of that's kind of reminded me of that as well. It's really neat, and I'm sure they checked us out and me out before she called me. But the reason I found out Friday, literally, and had 5 hours to respond, was because of that Newsmax interview. Now, it could be I was the bottom of the barrel, right? They had, but, you're looking for radio hosts. This is a radio event, so you're looking for radio hosts. And so the Newsmax interview I did, there were 3 topics. They'll send you the topics ahead of time, and one of those dealt with Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland's visit to El Salvador, the Margarita Gate, as it's being called. It's funny how everything that's kind of a spectacle like that now includes and adopts the Watergate scandal by placing gate at Watergate, of course, a hotel in Washington where the wiretapping happened back in the Nixon days. So, that was on there. We talked about that, and also talked about Wendy's trolling. Katy Perry from her flight. So I guess they like what they saw there, and I'd like to think that at least. And so I get this text, but had very short period to respond. And grateful to, I want to point this out, to our President Kim, who obviously we had to get this approved by her and the top brass here at SuperTalk, our content director, and of course had to make sure that Houston could go because there's no show without him to handle all the technical and engineering aspects of this. So we had a couple of conference calls Friday when everybody's off, and that's what I spent my whole afternoon doing on Friday to get all this coordinated and organized. So I'm not sure what else to say. I'm blown away, grateful, and honored, honestly, to have this opportunity. That this is, I think, a testament to the quality of this team and this organization and this network. And I just happen to, I guess, be the on-air person. Folks that don't know, a whole bunch of people are involved in making this happen every day, this show. The audience knows the producer, you in this case, and me and Rhino, but there's an army of people behind the scenes that make all this possible, and I'm extremely grateful to them for putting us in this position. You just don't know, do you? I mean, what else do you say? So
you never know.
As far as who will be interviewing, we don't know that either. That may be in the email. When I asked that question, she said it's based on availability of who will be attending. But I'm sure, given that it is a White House-sponsored event, folks are going to try to be there. I don't know which cabinet secretaries may be walking around and other members of the administration, but just an honor to be included and to participate and to represent the great state of Mississippi in this regard.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Fallon's going to be there because I was listening to his show yesterday, and he mentioned that he was going to be at the White House. I'm assuming it can't be a coincidence that he's going to be there as well.
He has a radio show.
He has a radio show. He has his TV show on Fox. So he said yesterday that he would be there this week. So, that's pretty cool. Now, you got to be prepared now, Gerard, because you never know what secretary is going to to get thrown at you.
I've been thinking about that. You get the
Secretary of Transportation, you got to be ready to go, right?
How do you prepare for that? Every issue in the country, in the world, how do you prepare for that? Oh my gosh!
Well, let me ask you this: which secretary do you not want? Which one would be like the if you're ranking them top to bottom? Which cabinet secretary would you not want?
Man, You got to give me a little time to think about that.
I mean, housing and urban development is one that I don't know. What do you ask? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Secretary of Labor would be another one that would be these ones where you're not quite sure what they're in charge of, like Secretary of the Interior. You know,
yeah.
I kind
That's
of
Doug Burgum.
Yeah. Deal with land management. What else is...
Actually, he's been in the news. I don't know if you've seen.
Well, see, now you're prepared for it.
He's been in the news a bit, just talking about some of the land that the U.S. owns. Yeah. And, you know, you've seen this. Immigrants cross over illegally into this land. They're trespassing on U.S. government-owned land, and that opens up a whole new can of worms. I did note that EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin used to be in the U.S. House, of course, also was a candidate for governor and came pretty dang close to taking down Democrat Kathy Hochul. He's a good guy. I like him. He's going to be in Tijuana tomorrow, so he won't be available because he's dealing with the sewage they're discharging, Mexico, that is affecting U.S. shores, right, in U.S. water. So he's going down to have a little talk with Mexico about that, which is cool. You know me, I love finance and economics and taxes and stuff, so it would be an absolute dream to have the opportunity to talk to the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, Scott Bessent, of course, and Howard Lutnick, Kevin Hassad, who's the economic advisor to the president. Follow him, have long before he was even in that role. Love to talk to him with the tax bill looming as an example, and just to get an update on progress on cutting the tariff deal. Of course, Secretary of State Rubio, if he's around, the Attorney General. I mean, those are high-profile cabinet secretaries. Education Secretary. That would be fun. What are you doing, to find out about literally dissolving the agency Linda McMahon she's in charge of, and her thoughts and views on school choice as well. She's a huge proponent of that. All of these folks would be great, of course. Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary. I mean, what an abrupt change it is between him and his predecessor, Pete Buttigieg. I mean, you could spend a segment just talking about that, right?
Yeah.
And any of them, the general questions of what's it like to work with the others here and for the president. And because remember, the focus is on all the activity and the accomplishments in these first 100 days. So, I'm looking at the information, Will, and it basically tells you where to enter the gates, and you get your press credentials and all that stuff. So all good stuff. So coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Kicking off a brand new week. Going to have some storms and rain moving through Mississippi off and on the next couple of days. You heard that on the break with our weather forecast, so just be aware of that. Doesn't look to be like some of these just massive events we've had, but still enough that we should be vigilant and be concerned. So, just checking out, Will, the additional instructions just received from the White House Media Affairs Group. And it basically just tells you, like I was saying before we went to break, where to enter the building and how to get through security. Says that the information on Our IDs must reflect the exact information we provided in the form we submitted, WAVS. It's an acronym. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but we took care of that. Had to be in by 5 o'clock Friday. So even tell you where rideshare can drop you off.
Yeah.
Said it's half a block walk from where they drop you off. So that's not too bad.
The only thing I've ever done like that was when the presidential debate came to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
It was 2008.
Yeah.
And they had, obviously, a whole section, I believe it was around the Gertrude Ford Center, cordoned off. And you had to, I applied for press credentials and was able to get in and walking around. And they kind of had, a radio row and just dignitaries walking around everywhere. I remember I accidentally bumped into David Axelrod.
Yeah.
This is, of course, Obama versus McCain.
Right.
The Great Recession was going on. Almost didn't happen. You remember McCain almost called that thing off. He said he wasn't going to go debate, and it was going to be just Obama standing up there by himself. And McCain eventually relented, and I just remember it was pandemonium. I mean, it was like one day there was no, they were getting the area set up, and then one day, it was not the Army, but pretty much an Army came in. I guess it was the Secret Service, and they shut half that campus down.
Right.
Basically, and there was security everywhere, and then the protesters showed up, and so it was a pretty wild scene. But yeah, I remember he had to go through all that security and all that clearance, and it was pretty amazing how efficient they were.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is the same deal, and this is not the first. This is I don't want to say it's regular, but it's happened before, and this is part of what the media affairs team does. Is they stage these events like this, and of course it's good for the administration because they're getting radio coverage, directly from the heart of the administration there at the Eisenhower building on the White House compound. So that's really pretty cool. It's just such an honor to be included and to be part of this.
I wonder if Vance will be there. He's out. I think he's going to India today.
Yeah.
He met with the Pope yesterday, right? And headed to India. I saw that in the news. So I wonder if I'm sure he'll be back by then. He's very media friendly, so I wonder if they'll send him around to do the rounds.
That would be great. I mean, that just would be unbelievable, of course. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, don't know who we're going to have on, but at this point, just being a participant, being part of this, and hopefully this will lead to future opportunities as well. I did ask her if she's going to be there because all this conversation I've had with her via text and directly on the phone there, he's just a person you want to meet, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
good contact to have.
Yeah, and she told me, she said, absolutely, of course, I'm going to be there. So, and there's 3 or 4 other people included in the email that all work in the same media affairs group that I just received. So, super neat, really is. Looking forward to it. We're headed up Houston tonight, 4:15 a.m. tomorrow morning. Just wanted to get there in time, of course, get through security and have time. Of course, we lose an hour going to the east and have time to set up all of our equipment, get ready to go. Ought to be neat, no doubt about it. So, and plenty to talk about, that's for sure. Incredible. On the C Spire text line, got some texts related to this. Appreciate that. Let's see. Ben from Madison says, Gerard, do you have an opinion? Oh, first he said, congrats, Gerard. Really neat opportunity, and I know it will be a great show. Appreciate that, Ben. Do you have an opinion in regards to Trump wanting to fire Jerome Powell? I too have been critical of Fed Chairman Powell. I agree with the president in that his moves have been a bit late, I think. I'll never forget him calling inflation, along with Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen, transitory when we knew it wasn't going to be. And then reacted too late, I believe, with making adjustments to the benchmark interest rate and then reducing it right before the election. The president believes that was all political, it does appear to be that way. The president is calling for the secretary, the Fed chairman, not the secretary, not a member of the cabinet, is calling for him to reduce interest rates. And again, on his Truth Social platform, I'll read you what he said. This is just a little earlier today. This is the president. Preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many, with energy costs way down, food prices, including Biden's egg disaster, substantially lower, and most other things trending down. There is virtually no inflation. With these costs trending so nicely downward, just what I predicted they would do, there can almost be no inflation, but there can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates. Now, in all caps, Europe has already lowered 7 times. Powell has been, quote, too late, except when it came to the election period, when he lowered in order to help sleepy Joe Biden, later Kamala, get elected. How did that work out? So, clearly, the president, no fan. He has actually floated the idea of terminating. I do like the separation, Ben, of the executive office there, the executive branch from the Fed. I don't like the idea of too much, I guess, interference and interaction there, although I do think there's some questions about the strategy employed by Fed Chairman Powell. I'm not quite as ecstatic about inflation as the president is. I think that we're seeing oil, by the way, tick up again. Not really exactly sure why. It's down a little bit today, but all the oil industry analysts all say we're going to kind of land in this $60 to $65 a barrel range for quite some time. That's where we are now, and that is certainly lower, but it was $65 back in January 24. So it's not a substantial decrease. Now, I don't think the president's fossil fuels-friendly policies have even had any impact at this point. It's just too early. And there's no indication from the big oil and gas producers that they're anxious to get out there and start producing more, just because they're feeling like we're going to see some economic contraction, and that means less demand. And so if you produce more and then the supply is up and demand is down, that creates a lowering of the price to a point where it's not profitable for them. So they're not just jumping all over that. Mainly what's caused the price to come down somewhat is, for some unknown reason, Saudi Arabia has increased its output. And that's all part of the global supply. China's demand is somewhat down because their economy is faltering. So all of that's figuring into the price of oil. The price of eggs, for example, I'm told had primarily to do with the bird flu, which decimated much of the egg-laying hen population. That decreased supply, caused the price to go up. However, we have to give credit to Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins working within the Trump administration to change some of the policies and guidelines around how to deal with chickens with the flu. And I do think that has had a positive outcome, and that it has spared many of those egg-laying hens, and that's thus increased the supply. So, yeah, the price is down. But so that was a good policy move, I think, on the Trump administration's part there. But the tariffs that's the wild card, right? Still unknown. Yeah. And I'm talking to more and more people, including over the weekend, to say they're getting price increase notifications from their suppliers. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
I'm ready.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Will is laughing because he just put up on the screen here in the Element Wealth studio. That's appropriate music, too, by the way. This is a photo of the Joe Biden family. This would look like grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
They look like they're gathered for an Easter celebration on Sunday. They got their pastels on for the most part, T-shirts and, casual wear, except for one person.
Yeah, and it's the former president, Joe Biden, and he clearly has been inserted electronically into this photo. But what's not, what you can't tell here, Will, is whether or not he took the place of somebody. And the reason I'm saying that, if you look at the kind of the spacing between the two individuals that flank him, right? And they both, certainly the young lady to the president's right, she looks like she's like leaning down somewhat so as to make some space, as if this was all staged. We're going to leave a space here for Joe, and we're going to insert him electronically. And as you said, they're all in like their casual pastel clothes, except Joe, he's in his presidential suit and tie there. Oh, this is ridiculous. Just go away.
He's one of the most photographed human beings on earth. You would think they would have a photo of him in like a polo shirt or something, a little bit more They put a full suit in there with
unbelievable.
It's crazy. Anyway, I thought you would like that.
Oh, I love that. So once again, just so you know, folks, we did get a question on this, and perhaps I wasn't clear, and I apologize for that. Yeah, we're bringing the show with us. So we're going to be broadcasting live from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is part of the White House complex, tomorrow. Now, the event begins at 9 a.m. Central.
Okay.
So, because it's 10 to 1 Eastern. And we did, by the way, request and received approval to continue to broadcast, even though the event's over. So we'll continue to be on the air for the duration of the show. So Central Time, 10 to 1. By the time we join for the show, we will have already been interviewing, hopefully, for an hour, and we'll have 2 hours remaining. And I'm hoping that we'll have a guest in every single segment for those 2 hours. The hour prior, I got to talk to Houston about how we'll handle that, what we'll do for that hour prior, because we do start at 9 o'clock our time. Of course, we have Mary's show on at 9 o'clock our time, so we'll figure out what we can do to perhaps record some interviews that we can replay, right? We can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, looking so much forward to this. I got to tell you, after it happened Friday, and I continue to text with Miss Jeffers throughout the day, the White House Media Affairs Director. And right up until both she and I had to depart, she told me I'm headed to Good Friday service, and I was too. And, of course, they're an hour ahead. And she said, I'll be in touch with more info tomorrow. And I got to tell you, I was still skeptical a little bit.
Yeah.
Just thinking, man, what if I don't get any info the next day? And so I struggled to de-stress myself and sleep Friday.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, in fact, just out of the blue, about midday, she sent me a text with information you'd want to know doing a radio broadcast, the technical aspects of it, extension cords and Wi-Fi and tables and chairs, and stuff you want to know, right, before you show up.
That we have to know.
That we have to know, right. So I guess I'll be carrying luggage bags with Houston to bring our gear.
It's funny how things work out. You texted me that afternoon.
Yeah.
And I didn't respond. The reason why I didn't respond was I was literally digging a hole in my backyard.
Yeah.
I had to redo some fence posts. So I was dead tired. I was digging a hole. My dad always told me that if it didn't pay attention in school, I'd end up digging ditches for a living, and here I am. And it's so funny because, and I finally figured out what was going on, because I kept getting all these. I didn't see all these texts, but finally I looked at my phone. I was like, "The world is what's happening?" Everybody's like, "Call me, call me, call me, call
Friday,
me."
yeah.
And I'm like, "This is Good Friday. Nothing's happening today."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, here I am out here digging a hole and finding out that I'm not going to the White House, but I'll be a part of a broadcast that's going to be at the White House."
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So. Again, grateful to you and Alex and Houston and Kim and everybody else involved behind the scenes. Like we said, it's a team effort to make all this happen, and for everybody to take time out of their holiday to work with us and accommodate. Extremely grateful. But when I sent that form and they sent it back and said, "Yes, thank you, we got it," and then the next day I got that additional information, I said, "Yeah, I think we're good to go." And now we got this other information. So I guess either we're on or we're showing up at the Eisenhower building on our own tomorrow. We're coming right
doing
back.
it for the parking lot.
Exactly. Fox News, SuperTalk News, and then Senator Daniel Sparks. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. We are live in the Element Wealth studio. Amanda from Pike County wanted me to, if I had a chance to talk to any FEMA folks, Will wanted me to talk to them about Walthall County, which is still in desperate need. We had Mac McRaney, of course, who runs Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. We got Daniel Sparks, by the way, Senator, in the studio, but he was in last week talking about it, and they're still a bit stressed over the fact that the federal government has not acted on Walthall County's request for declaration there, and I know the folks are hurting down there with those storms that came through. So, sure, I'll commit to you, Amanda, if I'm fortunate to talk to anybody from FEMA, I'll certainly ask that question on behalf of the great state of Mississippi. You know I will. And thanks for reminding me of that. I did a screenshot of your text, so I'll remember it tomorrow. We got Senator Daniel Sparks. He represents District 5 that includes Itawamba, Prentiss, and Tishomingo counties. Serves as the chair of the Economic and Workforce Development Committee, vice chair, Judiciary B. Senator, always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Gerard. It's good to be with you as always, and I'm excited about your Mr. Gibert goes to Washington. That's amazing.
I'm still having a hard time processing it, honestly. You think about how you don't know the twists and turns your life makes. Only the good Lord knows that. I mean, how'd I go from twiddling bits in the IT world, as we say, to being part of this event? And by the way, she just sent me another text, by the way, Will, to make sure that we got the information, we're good to go, and it requested that we respond affirming we received it. So I'm super excited about this and just honored and proud and looking forward to representing the great state of Mississippi up there. We got a great story to tell, and I enjoy telling it everywhere I go, and tomorrow it will be from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, part of the White House complex. So really cool. But, you're one of the reasons that you and all the folks who come in here as guests that make this show so great for the people of Mississippi, because we inform Mississippi here.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm thankful for every opportunity. And being that being from Northeast Mississippi, which is a long way away from Jackson, SuperTalk does a great job of helping keep us informed on a regular basis. I have people all the time when I see them in the restaurant, when I'm at home, saying, "Hey, I hear you on SuperTalk." And so I really do appreciate that opportunity to share that, not just with the folks back home in my own district, but across the state of Mississippi, because there are needs, just like the Walthall County question that you have there. When we have traumatic events such as that, we have our local people on the ground, the county emergency people that work with MEMA, ultimately that work with FEMA, and all those pieces have to move. And, we don't have any control over those federal pieces moving. And that's true in so many parts of government. And as you try to serve your local communities, and I represent a rural district, I represent small municipalities, towns, even villages, as a lot of people don't realize there's a population count to be a city, a town, a village, maybe even a hamlet, but they are organized units of government, and it's difficult sometimes to keep up with what is needed at the state and federal level as far as paperwork, as far as grant programs. And that's one of the things over the weekend, and trying to work on some things related to the ARPA projects is come to my attention and made me a little concerned that as we move past this COVID pandemic period where all this federal money was pressed down to the states, you and I talked about this at length in 22, particularly when the ARPA money was being discussed on your show. Mm-hmm. And some of the things, I went back and listened to it. It was on March 17th of 22. And some of the things we said are coming to fruition now. And that's the concern, is that now all this federal money has flowed down. Have we appropriated it properly? Have we been good stewards? And have we filled out the paperwork? And in reality, my concern, and DFA, I spent time with them this morning on the phone. They're doing a great job trying to help, but DFA is not in control of this direct money that went to the cities and counties, $900 million. And so I will, when I get off the show today, I'll be making some phone calls to some municipalities in my district that are listed as non-reporters. And it may be that it just slipped past them. It may be that they didn't understand the significance of it. But there is a great danger that some of our counties and cities could have money clawed back by the federal government, and they've already spent it. And some of these figures were pretty large figures for these types of municipalities. So while we respect and need our federal partners, we have to make sure that the strings that are attached we're able to handle when we take these type of monies.
This was $1.9 trillion. It was enacted in March 21. The money started flowing after that. But you're right, there was a huge part of that included money, funds that just went directly to every city and county in America.
Correct.
And it was, as I recall, based on population.
That's correct. There was a base amount for states, and then there was a population factor. And unemployment actually had a thing to do with it as well, because I went back and was looking at the ratio. But on these municipalities and counties, it was strictly a population number. And when it started with the counties, there were all these restrictions. It was going to be infrastructure. Yeah. And there was going to be a lost revenue calculation, a very complex lost revenue calculation. And after a few months, they said, forget that. If it's under $10 million, it's all considered lost revenue if it's a county. Well, most all counties in Mississippi, the majority of them, got less than $10 million. So it was unrestricted use. So that, it's their choice. They're elected locally. They could spend that money any way they wanted to. One of the things the Lieutenant Governor championed, and we talked about it on the show, and the Senate brought forth, was a match program that you could take your ARPA funds, and we would match 1-to-1, dollar for dollar, for municipalities and counties, and that we would match 2-to-1 for small municipalities, anybody that received under $1 million. And my municipalities, they, I went to them and I said, look, this is a way that you can triple, money you didn't have. And they did that, and it has been impactful. Now I've just got to follow up and make sure that they've done the reports and things of that magnitude. But that was the largest, I would say, local project bill in the history of the state of Mississippi. And some other states did match or put some money up. But I think pro rata on proportion, Mississippi put more money back into the local units of government, cities and counties, in ARPA match than any state in the country.
Yeah. As I recall, was this the program that was administered through Mississippi DEQ?
We had DEQ did one side, Department of Health did another side, because we did that. You are correct, but the Department of Health actually did the rural water side. We have so many places in the state of Mississippi that are served by rural water. They are actually outside of municipal boundaries, and so we put forward, I want to say it was $350 million in one side and $450 million on the other side, but it was a significant amount of money, and I think it was the right thing to do. And the lieutenant governor, when he brought that idea forward and leadership on the Senate side, he literally barnstormed the state to meet with representatives of municipalities and counties, their supervisors, their mayors, their aldermen, and just said, please wait, we're going to put together a match program for you and that you can double your money or more. And he did, and they did, but now we got to make sure they followed through on everything.
Yeah, and I recall talking about it where there was a deadline for it, and I think the city of Jackson, who stood to gain arguably the most because of the population, waited till the 11th hour.
And it appears there's many deadlines have been missed. Now, again, just because, I mean, we just had tax filing day, a few days ago, and you can ask for an extension, and you could mail in your return 3 or 4 days late, and I guess they'll do what they do. But most of the time on these programs, there's a portal. There's a timestamp. There's things that you're supposed to do. So I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or ring the alarm bell, but I can tell you this. I will be calling the folks that represent our county supervisors. I will be calling the folks that represent the municipal league and making sure they understand that the next report is due on April 30. And there are some cities that have been non-reporters for 2022, 23, and 24. And they're getting recoupment letters. They're getting letters that say, guess what? You didn't report, so send the money back. They don't have that money.
Unbelievable.
So we
that's
got to get on top of that.
Man, oh, man. Well, we'll see where all that goes. We're up against a break. You can hang around. We got to talk about the session that is over and the possibility of a special session, what we can expect there. We've got Senator Daniel Sparks in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back.
I like to hear some funky Dixieland. Pretty mama, come and take me by the hand. I want a hand, take me by the hand. Pretty mama, come and dance with your daddy all night long. I like to hear some funky Dixieland. Pretty mama, come and take me by the hand. Come on, baby, take me by the hand. Pretty mama, come and dance with your daddy all night long. I like to hear some funky Dixieland. Pretty mama, come and take me by the hand. I want a hand.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
I know you want to leave me, but I refuse to let you go. If I have to beg, please, for your sympathy, I don't mind, 'cause you mean that much to me. Ain't too proud to beg.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Senator Daniel Sparks. All right, so I guess the big thing with respect to the 25 session is that we died without a budget. So we're all waiting to find out, when are you guys going to gather back in the Capitol there to produce a budget for the state of Mississippi?
I think that's an excellent question. I told somebody the other day, when you give the keys to your car to someone else, you just have to ride when they say ride and go where they say go. So the legislature gave the keys to the governor because he's the only one that can call a special session. And while I'm not proud of the fact we didn't get a budget done, I do think there may be a silver lining in it because of all of the federal clawbacks and DOGE and the different things that are going on, is the state of Mississippi may have a better idea of what we're going to need to fund or potentially supplant when we come back. So anytime before June 30, and I thought the governor did an excellent job in his press conference assuaging any anxiety, is that, look, we're funded through June 30. And so there's no need for anybody to panic or do anything like that. Now, ultimately, people are going to sign contracts for, employees and things like that, and people are going to want to know what they have. But one of the biggest things that we probably need to focus on is what has been clawed back. Currently, that number is over $400 million. There's $138 million of ESSER funds. That was COVID-era funds that went to K-12. Lance Evans is working on that. He was on the show with Richard, I believe, earlier last week and discussing the conversations that he's had with Linda McMahon at the Department of Education. But there's some of those projects.
Lance, our superintendent.
Yes, Lance Evans. Yes, I'm sorry, the state superintendent. And they are they're actually some of those projects that are in midstream, and the question is if the federal government does not replace that money or put it back in play, which is what the superintendent's asking, is will the state step in? Now, certainly where you've already made purchase contracts or you've been waiting on an HVAC unit for 18 months or something to that effect, that's a huge deal. $214 million at the Department of Health. Again, all these programs may not be programs that need to continue, but they are programs that were funded. $7.5 million at the Department of Mental Health. I can't imagine a dollar that's going to mental health that can't be well spent in this country and in this state. We had over $10 million at DFA for Beam. Now, that's the internet programs that we have. So they're clawing back multitudes of dollars. And the one that really jumps out at you, now those are over $400 million. There's about $25 million potentially at the Department of Rehab Services that is just delayed. I had a conversation with the executive director last week. So we don't know what's frozen, what's delayed, what's stop ordered. And that's one of the things that you have to consider when you're doing your budget. And when you're looking at what you have in your savings account is what are we going to have to supplant? We also had a demand on the TANF money to pay that back. Now, I do understand there may be some negotiations going on, but at some point we're going to owe some money back on that. It could be as high as $100 million, could be less than that, depending on what we've paid back. So those are some of the major things to consider because I think most of the budgets were close to being done. It was pretty much level funding. You had a plus up for PERS because we have an increase each year. You had a plus up for insurance. There were a few budgets that had some specific requests, but to a great degree, it was a pretty level funding year aside from those plus ups. And we were at $7.1 billion. We had 7.627, I think, was the revenue estimate for this year.
7.2 would be our general fund spending. So
that's correct. Yes.
Surplus of about 400 to 500 billion, right?
That's right. Million, and it's in the
million. Pardon me.
That's right. I wish it was billion.
I got my head on the federal government, which is always billions and trillions.
That's right. Yeah. But it is of some concern. Of course, we haven't reached the end of the year yet. June 30 is the end of our fiscal year. We're $8.5 million over estimate right now in revenue. But going into next year, our expected revenue is 7.5 because we've priced in. We already have the income tax going from 4.4 to 4. But you also have to price in the grocery tax
going down
reduction, $127 million. So those are good things. Tax reduction is good, but it reduces your revenue, and so therefore you either have a spread between your revenue and expenses, which we currently do, or you cut expenses, and those are the things nobody seems to want to talk about.
So based on that, we're looking at what, $250-300 million surplus for fiscal year 26.
If you don't add anything to Medicaid, I think the Senate position
that's my concern.
It was $150 million. I want to say was the number that they had placed on that. So you're getting pretty close to equilibrium.
Well, even though I'm with you that we need more clarity from the federal government because we get a lot of money from the federal government. I know the lieutenant governor talks about all the time. Our true budget in the state from a general fund perspective, if you could call it that, is what, roughly $21 billion or so.
That's correct. So we're about a third.
Right. But about a third of it comes from the state and the tax revenues collected by the state and other fees and so forth. But double that comes from the federal government, and half of that's Medicaid.
That's right, and one of the big things I think that's for me is that I voted for President Trump, and he's doing exactly what he said he would do. It just hurts. When it's your program, it gets real serious real fast. There is $720 million of research dollars at our IHL institutions that are currently frozen. The largest amounts of that at Mississippi State and University of Southern Mississippi. And that research is in agriculture. That research is in, aqua studies, whatever, all that's going on down on the blue economy with Southern. So those are serious things. Now, clearly the state can't supplant all that that. But one of the things we have to look at, our rainy day fund only has about $700 million in it. And while $700 million is a lot of money, that's 34 and a half days of working cash. It's one of the lowest in the country. Now, with HB1 passing and on the pathway to the elimination of the income tax, the Senate's position has always been that we need to raise that number. We were looking at 12% of revenue. That would take us up to almost $1 billion. That still wouldn't put you at a huge number, but that's reasonable. If you're going to reduce your revenues, that you would make sure your savings account was flush.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're looking at is that, in the special session we need to address that because I think we do need a stronger rainy day fund. I think we need a stronger rainy day fund without passing income tax elimination, but I think in light of it, we certainly need to make sure that that's in place because there are core functions of government, and I think you and I agree those are public safety at the state level, education, and infrastructure.
That's right.
Those first three or no muss, no fuss. And even though we have an increase in the fuel tax to pay for maintenance projects because we were stuck on a 1987 fuel tax number, the capacity projects, in other words, with the growth that you have at places like Gluckstadt, the growth you have in DeSoto County, they did Highway 7 in Oxford, they did Highway 15 up in the Tippah County area, up in where Ashley is, and you have a lot of truck traffic and things of that nature. Those are projects that are capacity, and we have funded those by either bonding or in the last few years, because we have had cash, we've actually paid cash for it. So, there's a couple $100 million of projects this year. MDOT has a 3-year plan. This is not just, they don't just throw a dart at the dartboard. They literally look at what's the greatest need. They look at, what's the most impact on economic development. And so those projects are sitting out there for us to fund this year. And I certainly do not want to borrow money.
Yeah.
I think that we've done a good job of paying down debt, and as I understood the other day, if we continue on the pathway we are with paying off our bond indebtedness, we'll free up about $100 million a year that's been going toward bond indebtedness,
right.
I think, in 3 years. So that's strong.
Well, one thing I don't think we're going to have clarity on that's probably the biggest area that could affect our budget is whatever the Congress passes with respect to the budget bill, because there are likely to be cuts in Medicaid. And just for the folks out there, the Medicaid program, combined federal and state money, is bigger than our general fund budget.
It is.
It's gigantic across the country. It's super big here in the state of Mississippi. Some 750,000 Mississippians enrolled in the Medicaid program. They're talking about perhaps changing the federal match, and their Republicans even are squawking about that up in Washington.
Yeah, and that was the FMAP, I think, is what they refer to that match as. And that's one of the things in trying to entice states into expanding Medicaid. They would give you an enhanced FMAP for a period of time, and there were some of us on the other side going, that period of time will pass, and when that period of time passes, can we afford that?
Yep, 90%. State would pick up 10.
That's correct.
Yep.
And so now the concern is, do they even go to a block grant formula? And if they do, once again, if you believe that's a core function, you have to say, what can we afford?
Everything's on the table is what they're saying.
The core. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we could end up with even adjustment in the FMAP on standard Medicaid, which would be a problem for the state of Mississippi.
I think that's correct.
Hang around one more segment.
Yes,
we'll keep talking. We got Senator Daniel Sparks. Stay with us.
Now I've got a love so deep in the pit of my heart, and each day it grows more and more. I'm not ashamed to come and plead to you, baby. If pleading keeps you from walking out that door, ain't too proud to beg, you know it. Please don't leave me, girl. Ain't too proud to plead, baby. Don't leave me, girl. Baby,
Hey, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Southern Nights.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are in the Element Wealth studio with Senator Daniel Sparks. A couple of texts I want to get to real quick. This is a short show Monday. We got Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors at 12:05. Larry from McGee said, I'm proud that you and SuperTalk are getting this opportunity. I know you'll make us proud. Someone asked you, Mike and Richton, what is the big announcement? So Middays is headed to Washington, D.C. Mike will be broadcasting live tomorrow from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is part of the White House complex. We're being invited to participate in what's called Radio Row. We'll have an opportunity to interview members of the cabinet and administration. That's all I know at this point. Don't know who might be around that'll be available, but this is at the request and invitation from the White House Media Affairs Executive Director. Bryn Jeffers is her name. So just want to pass that on. All right, so here we got one here. Mr. Sparks, I'm one of your neighbors up in Alcorn County. I taught school for 34 years. This is Louis. If one of my students failed to complete an assignment on time, they would face a consequence. Why is there no consequence for elected officials when they fail to complete their assignment on time? Well, the consequence is they got to go back to work at the Capitol, and many of these folks, like the senator here, they got other jobs. And I'm not asking you to feel sorry for them because they all know this. They signed up for it. But the consequence would be if we don't get a budget done and we've got to make some other accommodations, my guess is a lot of people would struggle to retain their seats.
Well, it's certainly nothing to be proud of. I agree with him, and that was exactly what I was referencing earlier on cities and counties not getting their paperwork in time for the federal government. There's going to be consequences. The difficult thing is, I think sometimes when you're down here in Jackson, and man, it was good to be home over the weekend. I had the weed eater and the chainsaw and the pole saw. It was just good to not be in the legislative session and do some good things and fun things. But to a great degree, you are correct. We have to come back and do the work is one issue, but the bigger issue is sometimes when you're down here in Jackson, it becomes kind of a bubble, and we play this blame game, and we think people at home care who's at fault. And the truth is they don't care.
That's true.
We're both at fault.
That's true.
Because we were sent down here to do a job. So I agree with him. There's nothing to be proud of by not getting the budget.
We could call it a failure, if you will, but whose feet do you put the blame at? I mean, it's kind of a team effort as to why
there's
we're
174 of us. You can blame all of us.
And I think that's fair, honestly. They just, couldn't come together and get anything done. Now, my personal opinion is that much of this is a function of the way this tax reform bill went down. It just seems like that inserted a wedge even deeper between the two houses, and you being a member of one of them, you may not see it that way, but just from a casual observer, I guess I'm more than a casual observer in this job. But it just seems like that was kind of the impetus of and the driver of where we are here.
I think there's some things every year. There's some hot button issue, and I go back to the interview from 22 that you and I had. I was actually railing a little bit that if we don't get these ARPA funds out, it'll be a mistake. There was inflationary pressures. We were going to lose buying power, and I'll remind you in 22, the threat from the other end of the hall, if we didn't pass their tax bill, was to not put ARPA out. So once again, it just repeats itself, and it's foolish, and you can go back and listen to the interview, but that's exactly what was going on. But the truth is there are extremely hardworking people on both ends of that building that try really hard to do good things for the state of Mississippi. We don't always agree, but the other thing I would reference is there are joint rules, and part of those joint rules that are adopted between the House and the Senate are a schedule. It's deadlines, and we operate off of deadlines, and we just didn't meet those deadlines.
Yeah. So a lot of folks, of course, are concerned about the cost of a special session, and I think your colleague, Senator Harkins, sent me some information about that. You guys get paid a per diem when you go back. Is that right?
That's correct. There's 174 people, and you're paying for one trip a week of driving. So for me, mileage is more than most people, just because I have to drive 245 miles one way. But then you have a per diem, which is your food, sustenance, and lodging expense. I think that's based on whatever the federal rates are.
Okay. So I think what Senator Harkins sent me, it's roughly $100,000 a day. Does that sound right to you?
I couldn't refute that. That seems a little high, but I'm not.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
He was I think going to investigate the details behind that. But mileage, you don't get paid extra comp. Your legislative pay does not increase when you're in special session.
I don't think so. You get a daily amount, and there may be some $40, $60 or something in there that's a daily rate, but it's primarily
per diem mileage.
That's correct.
Lodging, yeah, I got it. So let's see here. Someone says on the C Spire text line the issue is much larger for school districts with encumbered monies on Capital X projects. I mean, that's what you were talking about. There's folks have made plans and have got agreements in place, and the funding of those is kind of in limbo at this point.
That's right, and it's across the state, because I looked at those projects, and I have some in my own district, and I don't know if we're going to look at those. Let's just assume the federal government says, no, you're not getting that $138 million. Is the state going to supplant that money? If we do, that's a project bill.
Yeah.
And it would be across the state, and I'm sure some legislators are going to say, well, why hasn't this happened already? Or others will say, well, I don't think this is a good project. So, we may have that discussion. But the same thing would be true at the $214 million at the Department of Health, the $7.5 million at mental health. I mean, it just goes on and on. And that's why I think, especially since we are now here at the tail end of April, and we may not come back into a special until May or June, we're going to have a better picture. And we'll be literally 6 months away from the session of 26. So, I would say let's be conservative, let's be smart, let's look and see, are we going to supplant some of these funds? And we can come back in 26 and address some of these other issues.
What's been the response overall, you think, to this creation of the new tier and the public employees retirement system? You, of course, heavily involved in that, and you're the liaison, right, from the Senate?
I am. I'm David Blunt, Senator Blunt, and I are the two from the Senate, and there's two from the House.
Two pers.
We actually have a meeting tomorrow and Wednesday, so this will be our first meeting since coming back. I'm interested to talk with some of the Board of Trustee members, because, again, they voted for a plan 8-1, which is the framework of what we put forward. I plugged in a couple more employee-friendly pieces into that tier before we actually passed it on the floor. The concern that I seem to hear most of all as I visited with some of my superintendents, sheriffs, others, is the 35-year piece, as far as working. Of course, if someone goes to teaching at 22 years of age, they could retire at 57 years of age. And
pretty good.
As I get closer to 57, that looks younger to me. But I do understand it's different. It's a different set of benefits. But one of the things I think that's miscalculated is that the defined contribution piece could be very lucrative for folks. It could also give them freedom and mobility. And we shouldn't be afraid of mobility, because if our employees are unhappy where they are, they're probably not the best employee for us at that time. They may leave for a period of time and come back. So I do hope that it's something that's very beneficial in the future. And one of the things, I actually got a letter last week, and I'm going to go to places and talk about the PERS reforms that we did and the holistic approach that we took to it. I actually have an appointment later this month back in my home district, and I will literally advertise that and put that out. I want people to come and ask questions, and I don't want them to be filled with misinformation, but the actuaries actually sent a letter out last week that our reform to ORP is going to generate $19 million annually.
That's the optional retirement plan.
That's correct.
Right.
It will generate $19 million more dollars to pay toward the unfunded actuarial liability of PERS in fiscal 26, and it will grow by $3 to $5 million each year. 2055, it'll be $105 million more dollars going toward it. So when I told people this was a holistic approach to try to stabilize the system, honor the obligation we have to Tier 1 through 4, create a new Tier 5. This is almost $20 million a year that will go in annually, and it will grow by $3 to $5 million every year. So I'm still committed, and I think the Senate is and the Lieutenant Governor is, to find $100 million a year or so of residual revenue to go toward PERS until we reach that stabilized status. And my belief, my strong belief, is that when we start having Tier 5 retirees, this optional COLA by the legislature will be a reality. This old age COLA that Senator Bryan refers to, which I think is a fine idea, to look at people as maybe they hit 70 years of age, those things will be able to be in play. You can always bolt on and add to a program. It's the fact you can't take away. So the guarantees that were made in 99, Gerard, we were over 90% funded in 1999 in PERS.
It all looked good then.
And they voted benefits that they didn't pay for, and that helped drive us where we are today. Yeah,
I get it. Just real quick, most of the reaction I see from members of PERS is negative in that. It's not negative against Tier 5 as much as it is they want you guys to do more from a funding perspective, like increasing the employer contribution rate to the ADC, which would be, another 7% or so?
It's 25.92, and it would be up to 50% before it ever got balanced. And ask your cities and counties if they can afford it, or your school district.
Yeah,
they can't.
They're talking about it, too. Senator Daniel Sparks, thanks for coming in, Senator.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're coming right
tomorrow.
back. Thank you, man. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Stop this world from fighting down, 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 down,
If you're
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Midday's final segment today. It is a Monday. Sports Talk Mississippi. They're going to be at Northwest Mississippi Community College in Senatobia on Wednesday. They'll be there for the Celebration of Champions, honoring an incredible year of successes: volleyball, football, cheer, dance, and women's soccer, with national and conference titles across the board. Northwest Mississippi Community College. We've just got a fantastic community college system here in the great state of Mississippi, Will, academically and athletically. Honestly, we're blessed very much in that regard. So we appreciate you joining us. The Dow has not improved. It's still down over now 1,000 points. The NASDAQ down 504. There's just no news to drive it into positive territory. The investment community is waiting on a tariff deal. I think if we can get just one tariff deal, a trade deal, I should say, that there'll be a little sigh of relief from Wall Street. But at this point, it's just up in the air. You've got relatively negative economic news coming out of the private sector. Lots of big companies are saying we can't give guidance because we don't really have any clarity on this tariff stuff. And so the Dow's just trending downward as a result. I'm hoping that something kicks in and shows some positive movement in the Dow. So Thomas in Greenwood wanted to know about Tier 5. I think we covered that sufficiently. Hope so. That's the new tier that the senator was heavily involved in. By the way, Senator Harkins was listening, and he did text me. He's done some further research. $86,000 a day. $86,000 a day for a special session. I said earlier around $100,000, so $86,000. So that, of course, is mainly travel and per diems, and I guess you've got some other operating costs there just to maintain the Capitol. While it's in session, it's probably a little greater than when it's not in session. So it's disappointing that we've got this. Now, something we didn't get to with the senator, or what are called member projects, and there's some drama surrounding that. Our news director, J.T. Mitchell, has a letter. This was, it's public information that was drafted and sent to the Senate by the Speaker of the House, Jason White. and he was talking about this. And so, what for you guys' information, this always comes right when they get down to the budget making process, and these would just be funds that would be appropriated to districts, the various districts represented by members of the House and the Senate. Typically, it's infrastructure type projects for those districts, and it's just part of the budget. You may call it pork, carve-outs, whatever you want to call it. It's a common occurrence. Every single time we do a budget, members make these various requests for these special sort of projects. Looks like there's some controversy around that. And I'm going to say again, Will, and I didn't expect the senator to provide too much feedback on it. That's fine. That it really comes down to what appears to be a great deal of tension created between the two chambers over this tax bill. I think that the drafting error...
There was certainly that.
Yeah, at a minimum there was that. And so there's I guess there's some pushback, when one side has a request. Now, look, the senators, we got to be honest, they also make requests for special projects. It's not unique to the House, but it feels like there's a little retribution going on, and I don't want to speak on behalf. It's just an opinion I'm having here. I don't want to speak on behalf of the members and leadership that make those calls, but it certainly feels like that. Yeah. Now, the other big question is, what are the topics? What's the agenda going to look like in a special session? At a minimum, we know we got to get a budget cobbled together and
then
passed.
There's this Christmas tree.
Yeah, and the Christmas tree is the special project stuff. That's kind of what they refer to it as, and it's just unclear as to what the fate of that is. I'm going to say again, guys, what's coming out of Washington ought to have every state in this country concerned, because for far too long, the states have received way too much money, this state in particular, as a percentage of its overall budget. Too much. And the problem is, about 50 cents of every dollar of that is borrowed. So the federal government, with its printing press, can borrow money to send to the states. That's exactly what's happening. We all pay for it, or we're certainly paying for it in the form of inflation and monetary policy and all the other negative aspects of that. Folks, we're out of here today. Once again, we are headed up to Washington, D.C. tomorrow, going to be at the Eisenhower Office Building, part of the White House complex there. Tune in tomorrow to Middays live from Washington, D.C. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.